Hi, it's John, and welcome to the channel. Great to have you along today, 4:57 a.m. I hope you're having a great start to your Thursday, August the 28th, with the big blue mug of coffee. Thank you so much for being here today. And I think this could be the most convincing video on the internet when it comes to Alberta independence. And I want to speak directly with Premier Danielle Smith today. And I want to use these points to drive home the fact that we need Alberta independence right now. I believe a majority of Albertans want independence. I believe a majority, Madam Premier, of your caucus, I've heard it's up to 70%, want Alberta to be independent as well. These points are factual. These points are irrefutable. These points are convincing. These points are why Alberta needs to leave Canada. Anyone who hears them should be convinced that Alberta will be better when it is independent. Madam Premier, let's go through the points one by one. I think you will find them compelling. So number one, Alberta has been used as a piggy bank for the rest of Canada, and despite protesting by the province and you, it will not stop.
We have no issue with Alberta continuing to subsidize smaller provinces with their needs, but there is no excuse for such large and powerful economies like Ontario, Quebec, BC, or Alberta to be subsidizing one another. That was never the intent of equalization, and it needs to end.
Alberta has been victim of the unwritten policy of the East. Screw the West, we'll take the rest.
To the new Prime Minister and the Liberal Party, I have one message. Alberta has had enough. Enough with Ottawa trampling over our provincial jurisdiction like Canada's Constitution doesn't exist. Enough with the meaningless virtue signaling climate policies that only make Canadians poorer and threaten our energy security. Enough of their screw the West, we'll take the rest mentality.
The government of Canada is run by net zero climate zealots who will never allow Alberta to reach its potential.
Eco-extremist former Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault is still in cabinet. But that shouldn't surprise any of us, given that the new Prime Minister is a whole new level of climate zealot and eco-extremist. From his decades-long push for net zero banking that sought to make it impossible for banks to invest in oil and gas, to his promise now to massively increase carbon taxes on our industry, make no mistake, he wants to eviscerate our oil and gas industry. It's right in his book.
The government of Canada fails at negotiating with our biggest trading partner, while a strong Alberta is called names for doing what is necessary to ensure prosperity.
And what does Team Carney want me to do? They want me to abandon my post, remain in Alberta, and do absolutely nothing to defend our province. They want me to cower in the face of Eastern media pundits and politicians who favor political grandstanding to effective diplomacy. I'm fiercely criticized for going into the lion's den to change the hearts and minds of the very Americans that we need on Canada's side to avoid a trade war with the most powerful economy on earth. They want this lady and Alberta to just sit down and shut up. Well, here's my response to that. I will not be silent. Alberta will not be silent. We will not be pushed around and called traitors for merely having the courage to actually do something about our nation's and province's predicament other than merely indulging in self-righteous tantrums. And I, for one, will never be silenced by the party in Ottawa that has sold out our beloved province for the last 10 years with the help of their NDP collaborators.
Why should Alberta stay in a country that replaces a bad leader with one that is even worse?
The offensive agenda that we have, whether it's emissions caps or net zero electricity regs, all generate from Mark Carney, who's been pushing that agenda for a long period of time. So if you think that I would meet the potential of his leadership with any enthusiasm, let me tell you, I think he'd be even worse than what we see out of Justin Trudeau.
Madam Premier, why should Alberta continue to accept any rules that continues to threaten our biggest industry?
The inability to approve pipelines, getting approvals and then having them pulled, having a convoluted regulatory process that makes it impossible to get new pipelines built, continued threats of regulating our power grid, continued threats of regulating our industry, continued threats of export taxes, cutting off energy. I haven't really seen any change. that would lead me to be encouraged that we're going to have a reset on our relationship.
Alberta and Albertans continue to get ripped off by Ottawa that uses our money to fund places that vote Liberal.
Ottawa overtaxing us. I mentioned that at the beginning of the evening, that our program costs are 70% of all tax dollars. We only collect 40%. Ottawa collects 60%, and then they use political means to transfer it. Alberta, year after year, has $20 to $25 billion that is siphoned out of our system to go to Ottawa so that it can be spent mostly in Quebec, but also in other places that vote Liberal. We have been watching this for years. $600 billion in the last 40 or 50 years that have been taken out of this province. You don't think we might be able to do a little bit more on social spending if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? You don't think we'd be able to cut taxes a bit if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? It is $5,000 per Albertan that every single year gets transferred out of this province for political reasons so that the Liberals can continue to spend it in places that vote Liberal. That is what is happening in the province and in the country.
Alberta continues to be treated unfairly, but we're told to shut up and keep paying.
In just the last 10 years alone, more than $500 billion, that's $500 billion, in global investment capital destined for our resource sector has disappeared. It walked away from Alberta and Canada and instead headed off to Texas, Asia, and the Middle East, to places that welcome resource development and jobs. That cost Alberta and Canada quite literally hundreds of billions in GDP, corporate taxes and resource royalties for healthcare, education, and public infrastructure. It cost hundreds of thousands of jobs and thousands of healthy and growing businesses. It was national self-harm on a level never seen.
Ottawa and the Liberal Party isn't the solution to any problem, Madam Premier. It is the cause of Alberta's problems.
Alberta is being held back. Our economy has been under attack for most of the last 10 years. Frankly, off and on for decades long before then. Not by a foreign country or by world economic forces. No, Alberta's biggest threat to our prosperity and growth has come from our own nation's capital. Alberta has an Ottawa problem.
Ottawa, Liberals in the East have cost us tens of thousands of jobs and hundreds of billions of dollars in wealth for Albertans.
And for the last 10 years, to put into context why we need it again a few years later, Ottawa, led by the Liberal government, has taken direct aim at Alberta's core industries. From Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines law, to the tanker ban off the Northwest BC coast, the oil and gas emission cap, which of course targets one sector and we know is meant to be a production cap, not just an emissions cap, and their net zero mandates on electricity as well as vehicles. In fact, in just the last 10 years alone, more than $500 billion in global investment capital destined for our resource sector has disappeared. It's cost us hundreds of thousands of jobs and hundreds of billions in GDP and resource royalties that could have been used for healthcare, for education, and for public infrastructure.
Canada continues to get in the way of what Alberta does best, building things. They aren't the solution to any problem. Ottawa is the problem. They get in the way.
If they would just let us build more pipelines to get more of our product to market, whether it was, let me give you the numbers so that you just know how big it is. If they hadn't canceled Northern Gateway, that was approved and the federal Liberals canceled it. We were well on our way to getting Energy East up and running, except for they couldn't see an end to the regulatory process after spending $1 billion, so they pulled the plug. We were building the Keystone XL pipeline and they didn't lift one finger to help us with the American administration when they turned around and canceled it 5 seconds after Biden got elected. If we had had those 3 pipelines built, they'd be built today and we'd be selling 2.5 million barrels of oil per day more. At today's prices, that's $55 billion in GDP.
Mark Carney, the Liberals and Ottawa want to leave our riches in the ground, Madam Premier. It's absolute insanity.
Well, you have to understand just how damaged Alberta is by the fact that we didn't get pipelines built. If we had built Northern Gateway, if we'd built Keystone and we'd built Energy East, we'd have 2.5 million barrels more per day of production, which is $55 billion a year worth of GDP value, which is worth $17 billion to my government alone and about an equal amount to the federal government. So this is not just an ideological argument. It's not just a minor disagreement. Oil is by far the most valuable export for Canada. Any of the projects that you will see on the ultimate list, I will tell you that a bitumen pipeline will be by far the greatest benefit to all of Canada. That's why we're going to continue to push for it, because it's a good project. It's good for our country. There's $9 trillion worth of value in discoverable and achievable reserves right now. And so why would you leave that in the ground? No other country in the world would, and we shouldn't either.
Because of Canada, Alberta keeps falling behind.
Actually, we've got the lowest living standards in the world. Like we're falling behind all the OECD countries in productivity growth and standard of living growth. And that's because these are the kind of projects that consistently fail and do not get built. So we can't sugarcoat that. That is a reality. If we want to be a rich country and we want to be able to keep up with our neighbors in growth, we've got to build things. We've got to dig things out of the ground. We've got to get products to market. We can't keep on borrowing and borrowing and borrowing and watching the kind of situation that we've seen over the last 10 years develop. That is not what Albertans want. It's not what Canadians want. And so I think there needs to be a complete attitude adjustment about all of these projects, because we've lost a lot of opportunity across the board, across the country.
Madam Premier, I hope you found these points convincing. Wouldn't it be great if Alberta had a strong official voice speaking out on behalf of the Alberta independence movement? Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. Please share the video as well, and I'll see you in the next one.